Welcome to Menopause Monday. So today I'm actually going to be talking about pelvic floor exercises and showing you a few easy exercises to get started with. First and foremost, if you get help from these videos, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future episodes. So many of us suffer from pelvic floor weakness. Factors leading to incontinence or weakness can be things like childbirth, very common, menopause, whoop, whoop, yay, great, bring it on, long-term cough, constipation, excess weight, pelvic surgery or trauma, and repeated heavy lifting. The good news is that pelvic floor muscles can be strengthened just like any other muscle of the body. So please don't think that there's nothing that you can do. There's actually a lot that you can do. And I'm going to share how to go about doing that in today's video. The muscles, they need to be worked regularly like any other muscle of the body. First and foremost, I will go over some common symptoms that are associated with pelvic floor weakness or dysfunction. So it can be leaking urine when you're maybe going for a run, when you're walking, when you're trampolining, jumping, coughing, sneezing. Trampolining for me straight after childbirth was just horrendous. I can do it now, so I'm relieved to say, but I just had to look at a trampoline and it's just like, ooh. But rest assured, you can totally get back on that trampoline, and with, not overnight, but within a few weeks to months, you're going to notice a significant improvement in your pelvic floor health in general. So a pelvic floor can essentially mean it can feel like a sudden need to pass urine. It can be leakage from your back passage. That's also associated with pelvic floor dysfunction. It can be decreased satisfaction during sexual intercourse. So first and foremost, I'm going to I just want to sort of give you a good idea about what the pelvic floor muscles look like so that you can apply some visualization to the exercises when you're doing them, because I think if you can understand how it all works, it's going to give you a much easier way of thinking, I can't quite feel it, but I know the area that I need to be working on. The pelvic floor muscles essentially look a bit like a hammock. They're a supportive sling of muscles that stretch from the tailbone at the back to the front of the pubic bone right at the front, and the sort of that kind of shape. So a little bit like a hammock, I suppose you could say, is probably the best way of describing them. They're responsible for supporting the bladder, the womb, the bowel, and especially sort of helping to protect them from external damage. It's also important to know that pelvic floor muscles can be over tight, which can also lead to dysfunction and can also lead to weakness. Like a tight muscle is a tense muscle, and that is not healthy muscle. So it's important to have an understanding that it might not be a slack muscle, it might not be a weak muscle, or it might not be a slack muscle due to inactivity. It could be pelvic floor muscles that are actually too tense and have become dysfunctional. Like any other muscle in the body, a healthy muscle performs correctly. A tense muscle is much more prone to injury and inflammation. If you have tense pelvic floor muscles, you're likely to feel a deep ache down sort of around the pelvic area. You may also find that you're getting sort of sudden sharp pains, and that can be due to trigger points. So like in a muscle, when you probably call it as a knot, which is an adhesion. It's essentially, you can get sort of small knots in the pelvic floor muscle too. Those are called trigger points, and they can, so a very sort of small focus area that's causing you pain, and those can be extremely uncomfortable. If you're getting that, the chances are it's a tense hammock, tense pelvic floor muscles, as opposed to not well-toned pelvic floor muscles. So essentially, what causes tight pelvic floor muscles? Because that's going to be quite useful for you to know. It can be various factors. Obviously, trauma and abuse is going or can cause mental and physical damage. So you may have anxiety related around what might have happened to you. That can cause a tension within the pelvic floor muscles. It can be injury that you've sustained due to surgery, possibly, or maybe even childbirth. And, you know, as with all muscles, if we've actually had surgery or something's happened to them, we need to give them time to recover properly. And overwork, so if like you start doing the pelvic floor muscle exercises that I share with you today, and you do too many of them and you don't allow your body time to recover in between time, like any muscle, if I did loads and loads of squats, I would have problems in my glutes and my quads and probably other muscle groups too. Rest and recovery is incredibly important. So while you want to start on regular strengthening exercises, you also want to make sure that you don't overdo it, particularly in the early days if you're new to pelvic floor exercises. So what I will suggest to you today is sort of very lightweight exercises and small reps. So if you're brand new to pelvic floor exercises, it gives you a nice way in. And then next week, I'll step it up a notch and we'll do more intensive exercises that once you've got some strength in your pelvic floor, these are going to help further build on that strength that you create. But it's really important to make sure that you start and don't overdo it, because you don't want to risk creating tense muscles within the pelvic floor. And also poor posture can have a negative impact on our pelvic floor. I think so many of us have poor posture because we're sat down for so many hours of the day these days, the majority of us. Or even if you stand up, you might find that eventually your hips sort of tilt backwards and you stick with your bum out a bit more. All of that has a negative impact on how the pelvic floor muscles work. It's not just those muscles specifically, it's the gluteals, it's our abdominal muscles, it's our back muscles, the core as a whole, our hip flexors, they all have an effect on how the pelvic floor muscles work. So, you know, I'm going to be incorporating more of that information next week, but I just want you to understand every muscle has an integral role to support other muscles of the body. So it's not just pelvic floor, but today we're going to get more, you're going to learn how to actually work the pelvic floor muscles in order so that you know the area that you need to be strengthening, and the exercise that I show you will help you do that. Even things like constipation can cause pelvic floor weakness. If you're constantly straining and pushing down, that can also lead to a weakness in the pelvic floor and also inflammation. If you lift heavy things regularly, particularly if you don't lift them properly, that can also lead to pelvic floor weakness. So today's video, as I said, is going to start at a very, very basic level. Sorry about the wind. I hope the wind isn't affecting the audio here, but it's just so hot inside. I decided to do this outside. So yeah, it can be tricky to know if you're engaging your pelvic floor muscles correctly, particularly if you're brand new to this. So I like to use a visualization which sort of acts like a jellyfish. So when you're engaging the front, back and sides of your pelvic floor, you're going up like a jellyfish. And it's that upwards contraction without clenching your butt muscles or your thigh muscles or your tummy muscles. It's like that you can feel. So it's essentially an up and down movement of your pelvic floor that you want to work upon. And to start with, literally just, I don't know, 3 or 4 reps of each move, which I'll show you in a few moments. And as your pelvic floor gets stronger, you'll be able to increase the reps, and you'll be able to increase the amount of time that you're doing those reps throughout the course of the day. Your pelvic floor has a front, a back, and 2 sides. And depending on how your posture is and our sort of mechanical alignment, because most of us are a bit skewy. I know my pelvis is sort of slightly off to the left, and I can feel the front of my pelvic floor quite easily. The back I can feel pretty easily, but to engage my right side of my pelvic floor is a lot more difficult. I don't know why it's that bad, but it is. It's just like, can I feel it? Can I feel it? That's why I want you to visualize what's going on in your pelvic floor. While you're either sat here listening to what I'm saying now, or go and lie down, because lying down takes some of the pressure off the pelvic floor, because as we sit, we put quite a lot of pressure on it. Just have a feel now. Can you feel the front? Try and contract the front of the pelvic floor. And then try and contract the back. I find the back slightly more difficult than the front. And then try and contract the left of your pelvic floor. You can do that bit. And then try and contract the right. Ugh, that's more tricky. So definitely my right side, I can do some work on. You might not be able to feel anything right now, but please do not lose heart. Same with the visualization of the jellyfish. When there are many stories out there of people who've had a stroke and they've been completely paralyzed as a result of the stroke, no body movement at all, but they've been absolutely determined that they're going to walk again. And they start by focusing on maybe trying to visualize their little finger moving, or their thumb moving, or their big toe or their little toe. And they may not have movement for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And then all of a sudden, because they keep visualizing it, they're visualizing that body part move. Think it. Try and feel like you're going to make it move. And then it moves. That is what I'm talking about with visualization. So if you can't feel your pelvic floor contracting at the moment, visualize it. Visualize that hammock or the jellyfish, and it's lifting upwards as you're visualizing it. And if, for instance, like for me, my right side of my pelvic floor is a bit more tricky, I'm visualizing it as I'm doing it. I can feel it twitch a little bit, but it's not as strong as the left, front and back sides. So just know, have heart, that if you can't feel it yet, it will come. Absolutely will come. But it takes consistent daily action in order to help you get there. So take a few deep breaths now, get nice and relaxed, find a comfortable spot on the floor, get yourself a pillow, and I'm going to dive into the exercises that we're going to be doing today.
Okay, we are going to do our pelvic floor exercises. First and foremost, just take a deep breath, because this is going to be a really relaxing session, and I want you to be able to clear your mind so that you can focus just on the pelvic floor, and also make sure that you're not overcompensating by using big muscles of the thighs and the strong muscles of the glutes. It's really important that you can focus on that jellyfish effect and not have the larger muscles take over, which is what happens quite often when we're learning how to do pelvic floor exercises. So what you want to do, lie down. I'm on the grass, it's lovely and comfortable. Now you are going to keep your legs up, in your knees bent like this, and I want you to make sure you've got no gap underneath your back here. So you're going to rotate your pelvis forward, and as you're doing that, I want you to imagine that jellyfish effect and just hold it for 3 or 4 seconds. And you'll find there's a really, almost like a deep pulling inside this sort of section, almost like where your ovaries are. So again, just relax, and then tilt. So it's a tiny movement. Tilt your pelvis forward to get rid of the gap between underneath your lower back. And as you're tilting forward, engage those muscles and focus on the front, both the sides and the back. So tilt and pull up. Hold for a few seconds and relax. Tilt and pull up. Again, hold for a few seconds and then relax. Oh, it's really useful when the dogs help me. Snoops, clear off. And one last time, I'm going to just tilt, pull up, try and engage the front, both the sides and the back, and then relax. Now that is something that you can do easily in bed. So what I would suggest you do is when you go to bed at night, do it a few times before you go to sleep, and when you wake up in the morning, do it a few times before you get up. And now I'm going to show you the next movement. So for this exercise, get onto your hands and knees. You want your knees directly under your hips, hands directly under your shoulders, and sort of hands shoulder width apart, knees hip width apart. you're going to just engage. So you're going to do that pelvic tilt again. So instead of like this, you're going to engage your pelvis, you're going to engage your core, keep your tummy muscles nice and strong. And you'll probably feel your gluteals strengthen as well. But beyond that, I want you to focus on that jellyfish. So now, pull in your pelvic floor. You'll find that your gluteal muscles and possibly your inner thigh muscles might twitch as well. But if you can focus on actually pulling in and up the pelvic floor muscles and hold it, once you've got them engaged, hold it for sort of 3 to 5 seconds and then release. And again, pull up 3 to 5 seconds and release, and try and focus on relaxing all the other muscles of your body. Keep that pelvic tilt because that's important for your posture. And then focus, and for me, I find because of the gravity, I find this quite an easy one to do. Now, you may find the ones lying on your back easier than ones where gravity is actually pulling the pelvic floor down. For me, I feel a lot of engagement this way, which is why I want to show you just a few different examples, because where you feel the most gain, those are the ones I suggest you start with. So again, hips under, do the jellyfish and hold for 3 to 5 seconds and then relax. And then make sure you're not overcompensating with other body parts. The next exercise, we're back on the floor. Very similar to what we did at the first exercise, but we're going to focus more on the individual sides of the pelvic floor. So this time you still keep your legs nice and relaxed, just keep your knees up. Pelvic tilt, so you want your core engaged, don't want that gap between your back, underneath your back. And this time, think about this part of your body is like a clock face. So face is 12 o'clock, feet are 6 o'clock. So this time with this pelvic tilt, see if you can move your pelvic floor up to 12 o'clock. So there's a small tilt upwards to 12. And then move it down to 6 o'clock. But without not doing that, you want to keep your pelvic tilt, but try and move the pelvic floor so that try and focus it on 6 o'clock, which is down towards your toes. And you're almost pulling down on the pelvic floor. You might find that your gluteal muscles are trying to engage as well. It's just so useful. That's why they say never work with pets and animals. Pull down and then release. Again, 6 o'clock's more tricky than 12 o'clock. So pull down and then release. Next, we're going to go to 3 o'clock, which is your left hand side. So pelvic tilt and then try and pull your pelvic floor to the left. Ooh, that one's more tricky. Try again, 3 to 5 seconds. Woo! And then on the right hand side, so you're 9 o'clock. Pelvic tilt, and then engage go to the jellyfish, and then try and bring your pelvic floor down towards the right. For me, that's really hard to engage. So I'm going to be practicing these in bed. And again, 3 to 5 seconds, and then release. That was a good workout. Next one, we're going to put something between our knees. So you either want a ball or you can roll up a towel. So if you've not got that with you right now, go and grab it and I'll see you again in a second. For this one, I've got my donut ring, but you can use a ball, you can roll up a towel. It's just something to put between your knees that is going to compress a little bit. So I'm just literally bending it in half. This is a little bit more of a tricky exercise, and it's one that you might want to work up to, but again, it's still a nice basic exercise to start getting your pelvic floor trained or toned. So going back down on our back, here's the dogs, good stuff. Hey Snoops. So remember, Snoopy, come away. Whee, flying doggy. pelvic tilt, so you've got no space underneath your back. Oh, and the cat's coming. Do you love videoing? Live video. Oh. Now, I want you to squeeze just a little bit the cushion or the ball or the towel between your knees. Get that pelvic tilt. So instead of like this, you're just going to pelvic tilt, and then you're going to do the jellyfish. So you're going to bring in your pelvic floor. So you're still squeezing the cushion, you've got the pelvic tilt, and you're bringing in the pelvic floor. Hold that for sort of 3 to 5 seconds, and then release. We'll give it a few seconds, and then we're going to do it again. So start to squeeze the cushion or the ball, pelvic tilt, so pelvis up, so no gap between your lower back and the ground, and then engage the pelvic floor, the jellyfish, and hold that for 3 to 5 seconds, and then relax. And we're going to do it one more time. You can repeat this as much as you want, but if you're starting out new, I would suggest you just do it 3 or 4 times, twice a day. So again, engage, squeeze the cushion, pelvic tilt, and then engage the jellyfish, engage the pelvic floor. And remember to keep breathing. It's really easy to hold your breath when you're doing this. Keep breathing. And that's that one. Now the next one's going to be a little bit more challenging. In the same position, pretty much. So pelvic tilt, lie flat. Now you need to make sure that your lower back stays on the floor. If you can't raise, we're going to raise our knees. If you can't raise your knees without your lower back leaving the floor, then you need to keep practicing these earlier exercises. But assuming you can, lower back's touching the floor, you've got your pelvic tilt, and now you're going to raise your knees. And you're going to hold that, and then you're going to engage your pelvic floor. To be honest, when I do this, my pelvic floor is already engaged. I don't think I can lift my knees without engaging my pelvic floor. Let's try. Oh yeah, I can. I think it's just habit. So engage your pelvic floor, and then lift the knees. Keep squeezing. You can even add a bit of an abs exercise here. You can lift your shoulders off the ground and keep your arms out in front of you if you're already pretty fit, but you also need to engage your pelvic floor. And then finally, so have a bit of a rest. Do again, I would do that for another sort of 2 or 3 reps. I'll do it with you. So engage the pelvic tilt, knees up, engage the pelvic floor. And then if you want to add the abs, shoulders off and arms in front of you. Hold that for just a few seconds. Back down. Oh, take a nice cleansing deep breath. Pelvic tilt. Engage your pelvic floor, lift your knees. And then if you want to add the abs, shoulders off and arms in front of you. And then relax. So our final one of the day, we're going to be adding a bit more resistance. Now this one is going to be a little bit more challenging. If you're not able to do it, just stick with the ones that you can do. It's baby steps. If you're brand new to pelvic floor exercises, this one might be a bit challenging. If you're brand new to fitness, this still might be a bit challenging without the pelvic floor bit. So, but it's what I want to show you, because next week I'm going to go into more moderate exercises. So more of the sort of functional exercises that we include in our workout routines, like squats and things like that. I'm going to show you how to do them correctly, and also how to protect your pelvic floor. But this really is to start to become aware of where the muscles are, what they feel like, and to start to engage them, so that when we start with the sort of next level up of exercises, you've got a good foundation. So pretty similar. Pelvic tilt. Raise your knees. And then you're going to push with your hands on your knees. Now, it makes me shake. It's going to make you shake. But it's good for your core. Like I said, it's all our muscles of our body are interconnected. So a strong core, strong back, and strong gluteals are absolutely vital to your pelvic floor health. So, but this sort of ticks a few boxes at the same time. So again, relax. pelvic floor tilt. Engage your pelvic floor, knees up, and then push onto your knees. And that actually adds, you'll feel it, a lot of resistance into your pelvic floor. Make sure that at all times your lower back is flat onto the floor. If you can't do this exercise without your back popping up, hold off it until you can. You will build up the strength, I absolutely promise you. But this is, for people that perhaps do regular exercise, are able to do that, want to add in a little bit of a sort of an abdominal crunch and add some extra resistance in it to it. So let's do it another 2 times. So relax, everything nice and loose. And pelvic tilt, engage your pelvic floor, knees up, and then you can either sit up and push, or you can lie down and push. All the while making sure your lower back is on the floor. Oh, that's quite a hard one. And engaging your pelvic floor. Relax. Deep breath. And then for the final time. Okay, go with me. What do we do next? We do the pelvic tilt. We do the jellyfish. Engage our pelvic floor. Lift our knees up. And then push against our knees. Making sure that your pelvic floor is engaged at all times. And what do you have to remember? Really important. You got it. Your back has to stay flat on the floor. Oh, and then just celebrate because you've done really, really well. That's it. If you can practice those exercises regularly, I would do 3 to 4 reps of maybe choose 2 or 3 of those exercises that you felt most comfortable with. Do 3 or 4 reps of those, holding for 3 to 5 seconds, morning and night. If you're getting to the stage where you're feeling a little bit of a dull ache, give yourself a day off, and then go back to it the day after again. And I will see you again next week, where we are going to do a few more progressive exercises. So I hope this has been helpful. Any questions, please send me a message. Your pelvic floor is going to be so well toned and strong.
So I hope you found those exercises helpful and that they're going to be a good starting point for you. Here are a few other useful tips and advice to just keep your pelvic floor protected. Avoid being overweight. Excess weight puts enormous pressure on the pelvic floor. Maintaining the correct weight can be a big difference to reduce the strain on the muscles that control, bladder and bowel movements. Avoid constipation. That bearing down, that constant pushing is also likely to inflame the muscles around there, but can also lead to pelvic floor weakening. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Make sure veggies most, so the majority of your plate is filled up with veggies. The fiber in there is going to be really beneficial to you. Just moving back onto water. Make sure you're drinking enough. To know whether you're drinking enough water, measure or weigh yourself in pounds, divide that by 2, and that's the amount of fluid ounces that you should be drinking a day as a minimum. So for instance, if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be drinking 100 fluid ounces of water. If it's very hot and sunny, if you do a strenuous job, if you're menopausal and having a lot of hot flushes, if you live in the extremes of a hot or cold climate, you need to be upping that amount. That is going to help. Don't restrict fluid intake. It can make your symptoms worse because the urine is more concentrated, which can increase your risk of UTIs and things like that. And then lifting. Now, as women, we have the 3 holes in our pelvic floor, which is ultimately going to lead to some type of weakening within that hammock. So if you have to lift, remember to engage your pelvic floor muscles before you lift anything. Pull in your tummy, gluteal muscles nice and strong, and specifically engage, get that jellyfish going before you lift anything heavy. And then if you're going to cough or sneeze, again, just be mindful about engaging your pelvic floor muscles before you. So if you feel like you've got a sneeze coming on, engage your pelvic floor muscles. That's going to help to prevent leakage. And have faith with regular practice, you will make an improvement to the strength of your pelvic floor. You can actually get it really, really strong. But you know, you're probably just looking for normal life where you're not leaking, you can sneeze, you can cough, and you can go and enjoy time on the trampoline. So thank you for your time today. If you've not already, please give me a thumbs up if you found this helpful. Make sure to subscribe if you want to catch future episodes. I release one every single Monday. This is sort of my menopause specifics, midlife specific channel. I just hope you found it helpful. So thanks for your time and make it a great week.